Playing the piano stylistically is the signature of a performance. We use the same instrument to play so many styles. And in fact, we have to find what on the same instrument makes the sound frame of the style defined. It's a soundscape, like a painter's landscape, that has to be done ahead of time with the articulation and the phrasing, and the choice of the structure of the phrasing. Shorter sentences in Baroque and classical, long run-on sentences in the Romantic and the Modern era, and more broken in irregular structure of the statement. When I say that, it seems like everything has to be planned and nothing is left for the spontaneous inspiration of the spot while playing. But in fact, it doesn't. It leaves room for that within the frame, so that when you play a piece by a given composer going to a next composer in a recital, like a bouquet of different flowers, you don't just play the instrument, but through the instrument you evoke styles, of course, when you define them in your choice of ornamentation on the beat, before the beat, for the Baroque and classical on, and for the Romantic and Modern before. But of course all these rules live only because of their exceptions. It's more subtle than simplifying it by the rule. But there are guidelines, and those guidelines allow to transpose them in order to know where you frame. And I find that when you play spontaneously, you let it flow. The narration has to go through. It's nothing more beautiful than an inspired interpretation that is rooted in the analytical understanding, but not locked in. As a matter of fact, it allows to free oneself from these preparatory structural exercises in order to feel unable to express oneself in a faster tempo in terms of pace, or more driven articulation, or more air legato, or more staccato, or more spoken articulation. All these large palette of nuances for dynamics as well as for touches are so important, from the softest whisper to the driven roar, and necessarily not in the both hands, regarding the structural organization of the composer's texture, the polyphonic, the harmonic, the melodic, the secondary voices, the dosage of all these layers. The more I define, the more I don't lock in. I unleash the energy of the inspiration for why the music is so beautiful, why it means so much to a student to practice hours and hours, to hope to do it right, let less in front of an audience of specialists in a jury, but in front of an audience of music lovers. The purpose of it is to serve the muse, not to use the muse. And of course that is a statement that seems self-explanatory, but when you're sunk in the details of the performance and the fear of the wrong note, of the not far enough shifting gesture for a bass note, or the run out of a fingering if you didn't lock it in the right shaping of the given pattern that the composer wrote, then you have to deal with the unexpected and adjust on the spot. And of course, these are variables which are very necessary. The more you organize, the more you're free to contradict what you prepared, to dare go further, to push the envelope, not to take unnecessary risks, but to take calculated, driven risks. Any gesture which anticipates the shifting secures it. Any wrong note is the result of an ill-prepared gesture. The conductor beats ahead, the orchestra plays on the beat, and the music goes in a traction forward. This energy of magnetic kind which drives the performance in the solo pianist is all by oneself. You have to think ahead, count ahead, the pulse, muscular memory on the beat, structural vision on the spot, and at the same time let the music feel the space acoustically differently every time because of the magic that it takes with the acoustics, the instrument which changes every time you play. And in fact, in many ways, it comes out differently than you planned. So instead of being upset about it because it doesn't match exactly detail by detail, you rather look forward to go to the end of the sentence and give a temporary, concrete, structural meaning to the statement that you didn't plan perhaps with this pace, with this articulation because of the heaviness of the action or the lightness of the action of the piano. You're surprised by the unevenness of the action. You deal with the unexpected. But the purpose of all of this is to bring a statement to the audience of what it means to you from what he meant to you when you read it. And all this practicing repetitively, meaningfully, not only mechanically, though sometimes for the muscular memory it's necessary to repeat without losing too much of the consciousness of the details. Give a purpose to each practicing day, hour, a short-term progress that you can add as a layer to the next day. And even if as a day goes by, some of the conveyed fundamentals sort of disappear because you have to go again at it. Don't lose hope. Through long time, there is an accumulative effect where you ground something on which you can build a structure which is ephemerally evolving, and you're elusively trying to catch it. Is it a fugue? Is it a sonata? Is it a ballad? Is it a structure of a different style, a fantasy? You know how it ends, but you pretend you don't, because in the storytelling, to be believable, like the actors playing the same story every day in front of a live audience, the surprise, the effect of expectation, and the drama resulting, or the joy coming, or the whatever expressions of the human kind are expressed psychologically in the piece have to be as fresh as the first discovery. They're not faked, they're planned. But within, you let yourself, in the rupture of disbelief of the moment, live through it as if you don't know where it leads you. As if. Just like an improvisation or life itself, you know how it starts, or not really, because you don't remember it. You don't know where it ends, but you go through the path. Plans, means, decisions, regrets, hopes, and then bliss. Albeit ephemeral, but bliss. Is it worth it? Yes. What makes it worth it? Because it brings us a satisfaction to be able to carve and shape what matters to you. The soulful expression of music through technique. And technique, which allows you to organize your brain so that you can, through the neurons, direct the fingers in the different dosages of the weights to obtain the different voicing and coloring. It is exhilarating to be there for a student who is attempting this in their first reading of the piece, when as a teacher you've gone through many readings of the piece. There is always a new thing which shows up within the lines, in between the notes. In the structure of the transition of a rubato, the rubato of life. You might disagree with yourself and say, I did too much, why didn't I do less, or why didn't I do not enough? Somehow, it's your signature with your touch, your articulation, your sense of style, your understanding of the purpose that you're pursuing. And not only by copying, but though why not? The tip of the iceberg of the performances of others. Admiration is a drive. Imitation is limiting because you don't imitate but what you see or hear, not what led to it, which is in the preparation. And this, you don't attend the rehearsals or the practicing of the people you admire, because usually you hear them at ready-made recordings or performances. So whatever drives them to reach this point, you reach your own. And the admiration, the competitivity between performers is a healthy drive, as long as you allow with time to revisit the piece and let it settle in you, little by little structuring your own choices. And don't be discouraged if it takes longer than a cycle of studies or years, because it does. There are charms in every reading of it. It's a gift that keeps on giving. How wonderful, isn't it? The imitation of singing on the piano is a very peculiar approach. The over legato, the never dropping sentence, the length of sound, the sense of vowels and consonants, a syllabic statement, unrelated to the pedal, and to the other hand, if it has any pattern from arpeggio to chords or something else, to harmonically coat it, highlight it, sometimes overwhelm it. And therefore, through the instrument that is percussive by nature, as the piano is, to the denial of most pianists, you have to convey through this depth of touch in terms of the fingers going to the depth of the keys and connecting with the energy of the knuckles, sort of a bowed legato that you feel in the energy of transition between the knuckles, with the fingertips with a relaxed wrist and a relaxed shoulder, but a supportive palm. And how you sculpt shape that phrase that soars and drops the latest possible. You choose, since there are no lyrics. You choose, since there are no bow changes. You choose because you don't have to physically breathe. But evoking the voice, evoking the string player, evoking the wing player, evoking the human sentence, evoking the oratory expression. Inevitably, inside your mind, you imagine syllables, be them silly or sounds, onomatopoeias that don't necessarily have to make any sense in terms of rather the sounds, like in poetry, of the words for the sake of them. The phonemes that irrigate our resonance in our skull since babies, when we receive the mother tongue and we reproduce the sounds sensorily with all our senses through the vibration in us. And when we feel that the composer is evoking an aria or a duo or a trio or a four-voice fugue or a structure with secondary voices and accompaniment and a melodic line beat in the middle, like in Fauré often, or in the melody on the top, Chopin, but sometimes in the bass in many composers. Regardless, you don't choose unless you write it yourself or improvise it. Therefore, you serve it as it is. But as it is, it's only on the paper. You bring it alive through what matters to you. And I think that even if the instruments might betray you because they change every time you play on a different keyboard, but playing deep, fast in the keys allows to control better at all dynamic ranges, not only the soft or the loud. As a matter of fact, it allows you to make a sustained, long, whispered tone, even at the softest dynamic range. One dares not often play softer than soft from the fear to have a hole. One dares not to play louder than loud for the fear of banging. And these are understandable facts that if you stay within the mezzo-piano, mezzo-forte frame, you're in a safer territory, while in terms of variety of subtle color tones, it's a bit limited, to say the least. I remain a great admirer of pianists who express themselves through the piece, not over the piece, by the piece they play, with an inner freedom that appears as if they make it up when in fact they recite it precisely, like actors of theater plays. And this rupture of disbelief that you don't know anymore if they recite or they make it up because it sounds spontaneous, even if it's planned and prepared, or because it is planned and prepared, the spontaneity of the music itself flows so naturally, not to be stifled in a super organized way, nor with the unexpected random situation that can occur. And this is something that has to be harnessed for the student by the teacher, as I strive to do, between encouraging and giving the technical means to control all these variables which very often distract the performer from the purpose of the storytelling which they are conveying through the piece. If craftsmanship is honesty, artistry is a little more dishonest because you add more of yourself over the piece rather than only serving the piece. The question is to define where and when this is humble or not. For some, craftsmanship is superior to artistry because the text was here before us and the text will be here after us. For others, is the opportunity to seize the moment of the text and express all what their experience of life structurally, emotionally, ethically, philosophically, in the sense of their soulful uplifting means to them. And all their life goes through each note. All their life experience goes through this note. Sort of the wrinkled face of life goes through the wrinkled phrasing of expression. And the freshness of the piece remains as in the first day, revealing itself to you as you age. And the students who discover, and you who rediscover, as I said earlier, we are in a beautiful full circle of revelation of a piece which, even if known to others, becomes a signature of yours because of a kinship where you find that you found the right quality of the tone for the expression, not the pitch or the intonation on the piano, since it's done by the tuner and the voicer, but rather the spacing between the notes, between the syllables. Like a tenor has a timbre and you recognize the singer from another, pianists also can have a signature touch even on different instruments, unlike violinists or flutists, for instance, or cellists who carry their instrument. And this sense of unity between performer and instrument, horseman and horse, so to say, the pianists have to think about in an imaginary way, because it doesn't happen by itself. Unless you can carry your instrument. But except personal fortune, that doesn't happen. So in fact, the pianists have to adjust and adapt to all kinds of circumstances and deliver the most possible subtlety at all dynamic ranges with a wide palette of touches and phrasings. The pedaling is the most subtle thing to do for pianists. Most of the time is mnemotechnically memorized in practicing in obscure acoustic rooms on instruments that have no juice or resonance compared to the recordings we hear to inspire ourselves, which are usually largely reverberated. And so we overstate the pedals to make up for the sound that doesn't project long enough or connect enough, but blurs when we play in acoustics which are resonant with instruments which have length of sound, or we don't practice on them, we just play on them when we are ready for it. So it's difficult to change the pedaling according to the fingers because you play just after the beat in order to avoid smearing what you've held before, because if you play on the beat then you smear, and if you don't, then you don't know how you play because you don't disconnect the, so to say, rhythm of the pedaling from the action of the fingers. And those who try end up not knowing how to play because they realize that those two tracks, so to say, in the muscular memory are combined. And you cannot just say, oh, this acoustic is more resonant, I'll use less pedal. This acoustic is more dry, I'll use more pedal. That doesn't work that well. On one side is the practical effect of it. On the other side, the problem is that with the dampers up, then your melodic line becomes a series of plucked intervals. And you harmonize the melodic line where the leaps of the intervals, an ascending sixth expression of love, an ascending fourth, an expression of decision and sometimes drive, according to the composer's melodic gestures. An upbeat for the downbeat, or a departure on a downbeat, gives a resolve compared to a delay expectation. If you have a suspension, an appoggiatura, any effect of delaying the real note that you're reaching, and in order to reach, you go through longing. All these effects are part of the expression, and very often, if we had several hands, more than two, since the music for piano is so polyphonic, or at least in several layers, then we need the pedal to hold what we cannot do with the fingers, even if we have long fingers compared to others. But we'll never have enough length of fingers, like an octopus, to touch or hold. It's a funny image. All the keys at the same time, all 88 of them or so. But we get used to. And this problem with the pedaling is that it banalizes for our melodic ear the melodic line compared to the harmonic organization of it. And if you hold them with the pedal, then those melodic tones become harmonized chords that result from this sort of arpeggiated, overheld tones. Willingly or not, because of the, again, amount of fingers for the amount of keys. And perhaps to a certain extent one have to accept that the composer has defined it and often don't even write down all the pedal markings, but it's sort of obvious that if you want to keep a bass melodic or harmonic note far away, and then the harmonization in some type of arpeggio pattern, and then a melodic line over the secondary one on top of it or under it, or even alone, nothing but all these layers necessitate at least 3 hands and possibly more brains, not to mention monitoring ears. Of course, we divide our attention, we hold with the pedal, we smear a little bit, and we get used to it. And it's okay. But if we can have finger pedal substitutions, melodic repeated notes within the key, we can obtain a continuousness of the melodic line without the obvious recourse to the pedal as a foot glue for the fingers. As I say, it's not a universal rule because the textures of the composers don't always allow all this to happen without this, in fact, very good help. And as the left pedal is concerned, we have the problem with it is that we use it as a psychological cover-up for situations where we feel the sound of the piano is too exposed, eventually exposing the unevenness of our expression or of our enunciation of the notes, or the fact that the tone quality is not what we expect. And we muffle the sound, so we obtain something that on the spot for the fingers feels more velvet covered rather than more dry exposed. But you know what? It doesn't go through for the audience. Imagine that the tone acoustically has some kind of distant arching, like the phrasing arching. Here is the acoustic arching that has to fill in the hall, the space, the room, and you have to have your ears, the inner ears, projecting what you want to intend to do, and then while you play, you let the feedback of the resonance marvel your ears and discover other dimensions of the combinations of the sounds because of the natural acoustics. And therefore, unleashing from the left foot pedal, unless triple pianissimo, which you're afraid the piano will be too heavy, too loud for the action to obtain in the control of the touch, or just a dramatic change of dynamic range from forte to piano just for the spot, and then immediately release the left foot pedal after the subito piano effect, but don't hold it for a long term because then it stays muffled. While reassuring for the sound roundness of the tone, for us being with our ears so close to the keyboard, since we cannot have our ears in the audience and our fingers on the piano. We only project what we think we do or what we intend to do and what we imagine that we convey. And when we hear the recording of the performance, we realize what one hears when one doesn't play it and from a certain distance, relatively close or not. And then when we play, we think about what we heard and we start playing with what we try to match in our short-term ear memory of what we just produced. So we can do a second take if we have a chance to record in a beautiful acoustic room, and we start adjusting to the situation, to this instrument in this acoustic, for this section, for this transition, for this diminuendo, for this subito piano, for this accelerando, for this stretch with a pedal. We take those decisions in a split moments, of course. We know the piece, we practice the piece, but all of a sudden we have to adapt to the situation on which we have to play it, if we have a chance to run through the piece on the given instrument on which we'll have to play. I know these elements make a lot of students very nervous, and understandably so, because the unexpected always happens, and not necessarily the pleasant one. And since we're overly critical in our practicing repetitively, we get to know all the things that might go wrong, and we are so close to the details in the performance that we don't have anymore the ear of the listener who hears the statement of the statement, the meaning of the statement, the arching of the statement, the phrasing of the statement. Imaginary lyrics, as I said earlier, or just psychological tension and release, or delayed release, with all the different effects that the composer chose, or modulations, also harmonically that highlight it differently. In fact, all these elements make it almost never twice the same way, even as the most possible practiced to control, it's not controllable, and perhaps thankfully so, even if it feels like one feels a little bit helpless before even adding any psychological fear factor of stage performance. But in all objectivity, all these elements concur to this beautiful moment of the ephemeral sharing of the piece. Do not discourage yourselves. Dare, strive, don't be afraid. It doesn't matter if it didn't happen. You have always a chance to try again. You learn from doing more than you learn from practicing. The practicing is towards performance. Performance is the moment where you start learning how to display the piece for the audience and to accept that the unexpected will happen, and it might upset you, it might drive you upset about how come it didn't go through like I planned, I practiced, I knew it better than that. How didn't I manage with my nerves to hold my cool? You can get upset at yourself, and it's healthy to be critical with yourself. Not overly so, because what you need is to keep always away from any, let's say, bitterness about the fact that you have to be daring start again over and over. And like the philosopher says, the journey is the aim, is the journey itself. The practicing, the performing is the aim itself. And you have to accept that it will go in its own way, that you don't control everything in the aspect of the performance, and that you let the piece, like the sea waves, let you float through, and you control what you can, the most you can. If the audience feels that you're struggling to hold yourself afloat, that struggle takes away from their pleasure of just listening to the storytelling which you convey to them. So don't be discouraged that it doesn't go like you plan, and always think that little by little you reach jubilant moments and you live for them. Just like the polyphonic combinations of sounds bring you a satisfaction that is untellable, in fact, at so many levels of the perception that you have of the sounds and the music and the meaning and everything you put into it. If it reveals itself differently or with little differences from one time to another, yeah, that's what I really would like you to not get discouraged. I know it's easily said than done, but there is satisfaction in the humble service to our Muse.